Welcome back to another video where I talk about chameleons and plants and bugs. Yeah, I'm gonna be answering questions that you guys left on my YouTube channel very recently. So without further ado, let's get into the video. I get tons of comments, DMs, questions on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, you name it. People ask me tons of questions related to their chameleon, so I thought it'd be fun to take actual screenshots, actual questions very recently from my YouTube channel and actually share them with you guys, because odds are some of you have the same question. So we're gonna hop right into it. The first question being if spider plants are great for coverage in an enclosure. So spider plants are very common in the reptile hobby. They are super durable, very easy to keep alive. However, they're not a plant I usually recommend for chameleon enclosures because they're slow growing and they're stiff, which means they're not really bushy, allowing for tons of coverage, and they're not climbable for a chameleon. So while they are totally safe to use, you're more than welcome to put one in your enclosure. It's not gonna be my first recommendation. Okay, this next question we had to pull the laptop out for because it's a little longer, asking, I desperately want a chameleon and so appreciate your videos. That's great to hear. I'm concerned the climate where I live will be a problem. Any advice for people from Canada? It's very cold and dry majority of the year. Summers are brutally hot and often very humid. So the challenges we face as reptile keepers, chameleon keepers, is working with the environments that we live in. The type of enclosure that you pick out can make a big difference. A screen enclosure versus a hybrid enclosure. A screen enclosure is going to be great for someone who already lives in an area that is naturally humid. A hybrid enclosure is going to be great for someone who lives in a drier area because it can help hold in that humidity. One thing I do want to call out is that you need to be paying attention to the humidity and temperatures inside your home. A lot of times someone will message me and be like, it's 100 degrees outside where I live, like how would I keep a chameleon? And unless you're planning on keeping them outside, as long as the home temperature is around 70 degrees Fahrenheit, then you will be totally fine. So if you are someone who lives somewhere where it gets super hot, super cold, pay attention to the temperatures and humidity of your actual home itself. And then maybe a hybrid enclosure would be a really good option so you can have better control of that humidity and temperature gradient that you're trying to provide for your chameleon. Now, if you have big swings in temperatures through the seasons, then maybe you use a different heat bulb in the winter than you do in the summer. Maybe your misting schedule is different in the winter than it is in the summer. That is the beauty of having so many different heat bulbs available to us. That is the beauty of an automatic misting system, is that we can customize just how often we mist our enclosures to influence the humidity. So that'd be my recommendations. I think you're totally capable of keeping a chameleon even in Canada, although there's not many Canadian breeders, but do some homework on your species. Pick a species that's going to be easier for you to keep based off the parameters of where you live, and best of luck. Okay, next question. I do hand misting and now the enclosure is soaked, in all caps. I'm trying to remove the water with paper towels. Is this too dangerous for my veiled chameleon? Also, it seems like his crickets drowned in there. So with chameleons, we do a lot of misting. A lot of water is going into this enclosure, and sometimes too much water. A common mistake I see for new keepers is that they're over misting because they're worried about their chameleons staying hydrated, which is a valid concern. But for most chameleons and for most keepers, misting twice a day is sufficient. Once in the morning before lights turn on and once in the evening after lights turn off should be plenty of misting to keep your humidity levels where they need to be and keep your chameleon hydrated. Now, if you're misting 3, 4, 5 times a day, then yeah, that's gonna be a lot of water and it's gonna be challenging for you to manage and try and keep dry. We wanna make sure that enclosure does have time to dry out so we're not creating this hot, humid, moist environment where things like mold and bacteria can start to grow. So my recommendation would be to double check that you're not misting too much and to set up some sort of drainage system. So on the bottom of my enclosures, they're either bioactive, which can hold a lot of moisture in that soil, or I have little holes drilled in the bottom of the PVC floor. And all my enclosures sit up on a little garage shelf, which is always linked on my website because people ask me all the time where I got mine from. So I do have them linked on there underneath my Amazon shopping list. Besides the point, those shelves have slits in them so the water can fall through them and then be caught in a bucket underneath. So that's how I personally manage all the water, so nothing's sitting on the floor, no crickets are drowning, and my enclosures can stay dry. Next question. Pathos, I think they mean pothos, are toxic, so how are they safe for cams if they munch? So I see this often as well. Pothos pothos, however you want to pronounce it, are totally safe for chameleons. Now, if you look up toxic plants for cats or dogs, then yeah, a pothos plant is going to pop on there, and you definitely don't want your dog munching on a pothos plant. But we see hundreds, if not thousands, of chameleons, usually veiled because those tend to be the plant munchers, take down an entire pothos plant without any sort of issues. Now, that's not to say many years down the line we find out, you know, there's different toxins within these plants that do have some sort of negative impact. As it stands today, those plants are totally safe and are my #1 recommendation for chameleon keepers. We're saying how spider plants aren't. Pothos, 2 thumbs up. They are bushy, they are viney, they do well in high light, low light, they're easy to find, they're easy to keep, and that is why they're my #1 favorite plant to recommend, and they're safe for chameleons. Next question. Hey, just got a chameleon. Congratulations. I accidentally got too small of a cage, but her new one is coming tomorrow. Will it be okay for her to stay in a bit of a smaller cage for a day or two? So I actually talked about this on a recent The Wild Type podcast episode. It's a podcast I have with my friend Alyssa's Lizards. We did an entire episode on if chameleons make good pets, so if you're interested, check that out. But the reason why I bring that up, because on there I mentioned how I get this question, or some variation of it, all the time. Someone finds out that they bought the wrong stuff, they're scrambling, they're trying to get the new stuff because they've learned either through my videos or somewhere else that they need to get different enclosures, different lights, you name it. So my recommendation is make the changes as quickly as possible. Sometimes people are waiting for a paycheck, sometimes people are waiting for a delivery date. I totally understand there are some circumstances that are in our control and some that are out of our control. The 2 most important things that you get right from the beginning is having the proper enclosure, proper UVB, third one, proper supplements. But it's usually pretty easy to get the correct supplements. It's usually harder to get the proper UVB and enclosure because those have much higher price points. Supplements are a couple bucks. So if you're going to prioritize anything out of your shopping list, UVB supplements and getting that larger enclosure. So I would try and get those done as quickly as possible. A couple of days I think would be fine. If you're doing more than 2 weeks, there are going to be negative implications that come from it, and then you may see health issues start to form. So try and make those changes as quickly as possible, and good luck. Next question. I need your advice, please. I've been looking at these solar meters on Amazon, and I'm not sure if I should get the red one model 5.0 UVA plus B or the dark green model 6.2 low intensity. I love the purple one, but I know it's not about me. LOL. So this is a question in regards to solar meters. So there are tons of different solar meters, and if you're on their website or if you're on Amazon, there are purple ones, there are green ones, there's 6 point this, 6 point that. So which one do you need for your reptile, for your chameleon? So the one you want is a solar meter 6.5. And there's 2 different kinds, the 6.5 or the 6.5R. The R just means there's a little reptile on the front of it. It's literally identical to the 6.5, it's just one's green with a reptile and the other one doesn't have a reptile on it. I have the 6.5, I love it. It's lasted 6 years now. They are hefty price tags, like $250 for a solar meter, but they are a tool that you can use to measure the UV index, the UVI of your UVB bulb to ensure that your levels are in the safe ranges and to ensure that your UVB bulb is putting off UVB, because just because the light turns on does not mean it's putting off UVB, and they do get weaker over time, and so that's why we tend to make more conservative recommendations, replacing your UVB bulb every 6 months depending on the brand. And so the solar meter makes sure that your levels are correct, and maybe you can use your bulb for a little bit longer because you're able to check that. So it's not about the colors, it's about the type, and the solar meter 6.5 is what you want. Alrighty, next question. I recently got a veiled chameleon. When they first come, is it normal for them to not eat at first? Absolutely, that is a very, very common thing. Another common thing I see all the time is that they'll eat for the first day or two, and you're like, woohoo, they ate in front of me, yay, and then they stop eating. Like, oh no, why aren't they eating? So deep breath, it usually takes about 2 weeks for chameleons to get settled in. It's totally normal if they don't eat initially. Some tips though is make sure you have lots of hiding places. If your chameleon is exposed, you only have 1 or 2 plants in there, or even 5 or 6 plants in there, that's not going to be enough for them to feel safe. You want plants in those double digits, at least 10 different plants, to really give them places to hide to feel safe and secure. chameleons are shy eaters, so my other suggestion would be to cut feed. Put those bugs after you've gut loaded and supplemented them into a little dish or cup, put it in the enclosure and leave them alone. Don't watch them, don't try to hand feed them, at least not yet until they feel comfortable and they're eating on their own. So congrats on your new chameleon, and feel free to check out my other videos if you want more tips on bringing home a new chameleon. Next up, we've got a question about hornworms. Can you feed hornworms found on tomato plants in my garden? The answer is no, because tomatoes are toxic. Some people know this, some people don't. Tomatoes are toxic for reptiles, they're toxic for chameleons. So if your hornworm is munching on some tomato plants, which is a normal thing for hornworms to eat on, they eat, I believe, tobacco leaves and tomato leaves. I've actually had a hornworm take down a wild hornworm. I had a tomato plant on my balcony in my apartment, and a hornworm literally ate the whole thing. And then I was like half tempted to feed it to my chameleons just to be like, you stinker, you ate my tomato plant, but it had eaten them and I didn't want to risk it. So no, we do not want to feed wild hornworms to our chameleons. We don't want to feed wild bugs in general. Stick to the captive bred bugs that you know are safe for your chameleon and just go from there. Okay, just a few more questions. How do you recommend you feed your chameleon without tongs? So this was a comment on one of my videos on what products are safe to buy from Petco, and I probably at some point mentioned in there that tongs aren't really recommended, and I do have an entire video just on tong feeding, and there are dangers that come with tong feeding because you'll hold the tong, the chameleon can potentially get their tongue stuck to the tongs, and then what happens is us as humans instinctually pull back, and I've actually seen multiple instances where tongues have been damaged and actually ripped off the bone because of tongs. So it's something risky, especially if you're new to chameleons and you're still learning how their tongues work. So I wouldn't recommend it. What is a safe option is either hand feed or cup feed. Cup feed would be the safest option because hand feeding, you still have that risk of pulling back if their tongue gets stuck to your finger. Plus you have to have the courage to hold the bugs, and the bugs scare me, so I don't do that. But cup feeding is great, so you can just hold a little cup full of the bugs in there, and that's how you can build trust with your chameleon. You can also take that cup and leave it directly in the enclosure. I use a bird feeder cup because it has little hooks on it that work out great for those branches. We've got tons of different options, and if you're feeding something like crickets, you can toss them in the enclosure and they'll jump around and kind of free range in there. That's a good option as well. Next question. These are also beautiful. I believe that was a comment on an enclosure review video I did. I'm about to finish up my enclosure and I'm working on homemade substrate. You offer service to look at my enclosure and give feedback, correct? What are your recommendations on substrate mixtures for a bioactive enclosure? So yes, I do enclosure reviews. You're able to book them on my website, neptunethechameleon.com. I offer 15, 30, 45, and 60-minute options where I can answer any of your chameleon questions as well as do entire enclosure reviews. I would recommend anywhere from 30 to 45 minutes if you're wanting an enclosure review, because it usually takes about that amount of time to go through your UVB, supplements, everything. I'm talking everything about your chameleon care. So if that's something you're interested in, be sure to check it out. Now, as far as bioactive substrate, I don't mix my own substrates. Plenty of people do. I use the ones from the Bio Dude, and I have those linked on my website too because they have a bunch of different ones, and some are recommended for more humid environments and some are recommended for more arid environments. So feel free to go onto my website as well, and you can see the ones that I use for my enclosures or my bioactive build video. If you're looking for some ideas on how to do DIY your own bioactive substrate mixes, over on my podcast, The Wild Type, we have done a video on ways to save money, and one of those was being able to do your own mixes, and my co-host, Lissy Lizards, she's the bioactive queen, and so she did some suggestions on that, because I have no experience doing my own DIY mixes, but maybe someone watching this video does. Leave them in the comments, let me know. So there you guys have it. Those are 10 questions from my YouTube channel. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a thumbs up. Feel free to subscribe so you don't post a new video. You can leave a comment down below. Otherwise, thank you guys so much for watching. Feel free to follow Neptune and all my chameleons on social media at Neptune the Chameleon, and check out my website, neptunethechameleon.com. Otherwise, appreciate you all. Thank you again, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye. And I have those linked on my website too because they have at Neptune the... I was so